I wanted to come back to and circle around to something that comes up time and time again on the spiritual path, and that is this question of softening ego's grip, softening in the midst of the clenched fist, softening the hardness that we carry, that we've been almost consumed by in this world, and how softening is such an antidote to all that hardness. Amazing. To soften around ego's grip. And yes, of course, we start getting into the world of talking about surrender. But if we just think of softening, and how maligned it is, how almost ostracized it is, that softness has a bad rap, because softness to the ego world, to us, to the world at large, is weakness. There's no strength in softness. It's a form of caving. It's a form of giving in. It's a form of, when there isn't anything else left to do, then softness might be kind of found in a way, but not really, because I don't think most people actually want to go there. They don't want to talk about what it means to soften up the hard edges, to soften up the self, to soften up our attachment to ego thinking, to the defensive, attacking, judging, aspects of the self. We just don't want to go there, because softness, conscious softness, something starts to happen in us. A melting of the attachment, a melting of the sense of self, the sense of self that we derive from the ego mechanisms, dividing everything up, judging everything as good and bad, judging everything as right and wrong, dividing things between the inside and the outside, being very harsh in one way or another, either a victim or an aggressor, this or that, or this or that, or this or that. It's at work all of the time. So even when it comes to, the articulation or the speaking of such a thing as softness or tenderness, all we see is this vulnerability. And, there are good conversations going on these days in the spiritual world about vulnerability, about tenderness, about softness, about surrender, because it's recognized. You go down to a certain distance, if you like, or a certain depth on the path, and eventually you inevitably, as long as you want it to be kind of embodied or lived, if you want to talk about it in that way, as soon as it comes out of the lofty heights of a kind of non-dual awareness or a transcendent awareness, starts filtering into the life, into the heart, into the relationships, into the relationship with the body, into a relationship with one's own ego or the ego of others. What do? Well, I know for myself, really, that eventually, the path of deepening, the path of a sort of maturation, brought me really to the realization that softness was exquisite, that softness brings me and brought me closer to God, brought me closer to the divine, brought me closer to the essence. And it wasn't, softness is not a kind of a place that you get to. You just sort of a ledge of hardness, a ledge of, defendedness or ego's grip. And then suddenly there's a falling and there's this great, softening, softness. It's more like a gentle slope, if you want. It's more like a gentle realization, a gentle falling. We're softened up slowly, like Rumi said with the chickpea in the cooking pot. It happens slowly. It's a process of cooking by life. And the more we can be conscious of that cooking, the more we catch glimpse as we fall a little bit from the mighty grip of the ego. And we fall a bit and there's a realization of something deeper. But that's not necessarily abiding, that's a realization. But by and by, this cooking happens. Life's maturation, the ripening of the fruit, is the softening of the ego's grip. It really is. It really is. And that allows us to move in the world in this much softer kind of way that isn't always just like, defending, attacking, judging. It looks like agony after a while. It's like to be soft with one's own ways, to be soft with one's opinions, to be soft with the way one sees the world, to be soft with the way one interacts with the world, with emails, with messages, with social media, with the whole of the relationship with the beloved, with the pets, with the neighbours, in the store. There's no loss. There's no loss by being soft. In fact, there's a great gain in a sense because there's a maturation, there's a maturity, and there's an awareness. Because, once you fall into this deeper and deeper cookedness of the softness of the way, that you kind of truly are, then there's an awareness. There's awareness of the movement as you move through life, moving through life. You're not moving through life as though you're a monk or an enlightened being or like this through the supermarket. It's very ordinary. But still there's a grace, there's a softness, soft edges. The ego tends to have hard edges. Tends to. We're talking in metaphors, we're talking in riddles and puzzles and cryptically in some ways, because some of these things can't be spoken to directly. So the metaphor of the chickpea cooking is perfect because it speaks to the deeper soul of us, speaks to the soul, speaks to the heart, the spirit, the soul, the true self, stripped away of all of the shenanigans, stripped away of the veils, of the illusion, of the grasping, of the tightness, stripped away of that. There's this kind of, soft awareness that moves through the world ordinarily, naturally, harmonically. It's sort of like this. I thought I wasn't recording. It's like this, it's very easy. And then you see how funneled we are into the ego self, how tightly we've formed ourselves around this ego self, how defined we are about the ego, how lost we are in the ego's mechanisms. But it's not who we are. The ego's mechanisms are not who we really are. We're kind of, I've said before and I say again, we're kind of actors moving around in a drama, in the matrix, in the play. But that's not who we really are, and who we really are has much more authority in it. But that authority is a kind of softness. Delicate, but beautiful and strong. Like the spider's web is soft, but it's tough. Soft but tough. You can have these things. We can have these qualities because it's not either or. You know, either or is the dualistic thinking. Well, it has to be one or the other. No, it doesn't have to be one or the other. It can be all things. It can be harmonically soft, yet incredibly tough. It can be incredibly tender, but incredibly strong, powerful, have authority. All of these things. That's what softening means in many ways. There's so many ways to articulate how beautiful softening is. And we have to kind of court it. Think about it. Court it. Am I soft in this moment? Or am I really caught in the, on the spiritual path? The need to resolve this, the need to get somewhere, the need to be enlightened, the need to resolve this aspect, the need to be, to get over my past, the need to understand. Consider softening. Consider softening. Like the chickpea in the pot that's being cooked. Might take hours. Who knows? It's not in our hands, but all we can do is become conscious, more consciously aware of it as we move through life, through this experience that we're having. Bless you.